Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I am creating a card using the Besties stamp set from Hello Bluebird. So this card is one where I am going to watercolor some more using my distress inks, and therefore I am stamping out my images on Strathmore Bristol Smooth using distress ink antique linen. So as I told you before, there are different inks that you can use, but when I am coloring with my distress inks, I prefer also using my distress ink as my Noline coloring ink, but it's totally up to you to decide what ink you are going to use. And now I am smooshing on my distress inks on top of my acrylic block, and I will be starting. So first of all, maybe the idea that what I do when I'm doing some Noline coloring, or just when I try to watercolor, you can go really heavy-handed, which I also did in the past, and yeah, I think actually my latest cards with distress inks were quite dark, but I'm trying to soften that a bit at this period in my life, so that will change in time, each time again. But what I am doing, I am going with my color where I want some shadow. So I'm taking my paintbrush, I grab some of the ink from the acrylic block, and then I actually trace that line or that just the outline of a stamped image where I want to create the shadow. Then I go with my paintbrush into my jar with water, which is on the left. You see me regularly going there, and I just clean it off, make it a bit damp, and then I go back to my image to drag out that color and really soften it out. And that is the way I just keep repeating, painting the same images to create some shadow, some depth, until I'm happy. So sometimes I need like 2 layers, sometimes 8. I mean, it really depends. But that's how I roll at the moment. That's my way of coloring with my distress inks for now. So yeah, the rest of the image I will do exactly the same, just using different colors, which I am showing before I'm smooshing them, and I will also list all the colors down below in the description box. And for the rest I will put on some music and we'll be back after this image is done. So to die cut this image I am using the matching dies, and now for my background I am using the frame text Madison Avenue from Mama Elephant. I die cut it out of Strathmore Bristol Smooth as well because I'm going to do some more watercoloring with distress inks for my background. So exactly the same as with the images, I'm stamping it out using distress ink Antique Linen. And then I will again take my acrylic block, paper towel, smoosh my inks on top of it, and also again going in with my colors there where I want some shadow, and I'm dragging it out towards the rest of the areas. So just a tip, it didn't brought me any trouble this time, but I was like more confident with the grass than with the sky. I was still contemplating how I was going to tackle that one, but it's not that handy because you of course paint, and if the grass was still too wet when I started on the sky or anything, I could have smeared everything. So just if you're not contemplating about how you're going to tackle the upper part of your image, start with the upper part. It's easier. But yeah, just as in the previous part, adding the color, dragging it out. You will see with the grass at the current moment it's already happening. I used a bit too much water, and it's not giving me issues or anything, but that was not what I was going for. So if you use a damp paintbrush to drag it out, you have more control, and then your color isn't going to spread itself like it did. But I just dabbed the excess water, and I am going over that hill again later on, so it didn't bother me that much. and that's my background. So I wanted to have everything sort of matching, and of course I also wanted the sentiment. Therefore I'm taking the same stamp set because there are lots of sentiments that you can use inside of that stamp set. So to match everything and to keep myself from using black, I decided that those tulips were really pretty and that color is really soft, so Victorian velvet, but not the distress ink, but the distress oxide ink. That's really handy to stamp with. I must admit it stays wet a bit longer, so I made sure that it was stamped out completely, and then I took my heat gun. Now I don't know if you noticed, it's from a while back, but each time that I use distress oxide ink to stamp it out, and I know it stays wet a bit longer, but when I am so smart to take my heat gun, apparently I am not smart enough to heat it long enough. So I am putting this aside. I've heat set it, so I think it's sort of dry. I am doing this frame. I want it to match with the sentiment as well as with the tulips, so I'm just really softly, but really softly. I'm not doing any heavy-handed ink blending. There can still be some whites, I don't care. I'm just starting from the middle part so that if something is more white, it will be the edges. But that's what I'm doing, and in the meantime that sentiment apparently isn't dry yet, but I'm still going to do other things. So I have die cut this frame again, and I'm going to double it up. So this way the frame is a bit lifted from the scene. And then I am going to create my card base, which is an American size A2 panel. So I'm scoring it, folding it, adhering the frame using some liquid glue. That's easier because of course the frame you need, or I need to fiddle with it a bit before it is straightened. So I am tearing it, and then I'm wiggling it, and when I'm happy I continue with my background. So as I have layered these two frames on top of each other, I sort of need to push that background towards the back, and that wasn't really handy because of course with the heat setting it was curled up a bit. So the solution I got was taking an acrylic block, pressing it down really firmly in the corners of the panel that I am inlaying, and this way it was good. But here I realized that my sentiment wasn't dry completely. The company had smudged a bit, and the good thing about distress oxide ink is that it reacts with water, so you can lift it up again. But that is not at all what I wanted to do at this stage. It's also always in the end that you realize that you have smudged something, or that you smudge anything. Just it's always in the end. So everything can go wrong in the end. It's something I don't get. The only solution that I currently have is using some clear embossing powder on top of that distress oxide ink, then heat set that, and then it's fixed behind the embossing powder. But I wanted to keep everything sort of matted, and I didn't want any glossy, so I couldn't do that in this case, and I needed to fix the smudges. But it worked out. There was a bit of drama, but it's fixed, so I need to let it go. But just keep in mind, if you use distress oxide inks to stamp out your sentiment, for example, in the end, make sure it's dry. So here are my images on top, and then this card is finished. So I really enjoyed creating this card, and I hope that you like this card design. It's really simple, but it's just an amazing stamp set to use. If you have any questions, please leave them down below, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!